KETV Newswatch 7, chronicling the stories impacting our community. Stories making a difference. Stories that matter to you. This is KETV Newswatch 7's Chronicle.
We were out in Colorado and Jean slipped and broke her knee. And it was actually after the surgery and the hospital stay that I started to notice things weren't quite right.
It starts slowly, sometimes so subtle you hardly notice it at all. But eventually, there are other signs that become impossible to ignore. So, how do you know if it's just old age or Alzheimer's? That's just one of the questions we're going to answer this morning on KETV Newswatch 7's Chronicle. I'm Rob McCartney. Thanks for tuning in. You know, Alzheimer's disease is the 6th leading cause of death in the United States. The only disease in the top 10 that cannot be prevented, cured, even slowed down. Sheer number of people battling the disease is astounding. More than 5 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's now, and at the current rate, by 2050, more than 16 million will have the disease. Currently, 500,000 die from it every year. Women, in particular, are at risk. Once she hits her 60s, a woman has a 1 in 6 chance of developing Alzheimer's. Almost 2/3 of those with the disease are women. They're also more than 2.5 times more likely to provide care for a loved one battling the disease. And that is a huge commitment. In 2013, it added up to nearly $18 billion in unpaid care. This year alone, direct costs associated with Alzheimer's is expected to top $214 billion. Well, with $1 in $5 of all that Medicare spending going to people with Alzheimer's and other dementias. All that is why finding a cure, or at least a way to slow Alzheimer's progression, is so important. You know, it seems like every week there is a new study out promising to help stave off your chances of developing. For example, some researchers found drinking coffee not only wakes you up, but a couple cups a day could lower your risk of developing Alzheimer's. Coffee not your thing? Well, how about beer? Apparently there's a compound in the hops that has the potential to protect brain cells from damage, may even slow the development of Alzheimer's. But scientists caution you should still drink beer in moderation. The study showing the most hope may be the one recently out of UCLA. They took 10 patients in various stages of dementia, put them through an intense program, actually reversed symptoms in 9 of those 10. Here's what the treatment did. It optimized vitamin D levels in blood, used DHA supplements to bridge broken connections in the brain, improved their gut health, and used fasting to make insulin levels normal. All right. With all that, this morning, we want to talk about what's ahead. Beginning our discussion is Viv Ewing from the Alzheimer's Association and Dr. Rebecca Riley, who practices geriatrics at Methodist Hospital. Welcome. Thanks very much for joining us for the discussion.
Thanks, Rob.
Dr. Riley, I want to start with you. Tell us a little bit about the signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's. I mean, is it more than just forgetting where you put your keys?
Certainly. All of us forget little things sometimes. When we start getting worried is when it becomes a pattern. When someone is a little bit forgetful and has trouble maybe at Christmas time this year, but then next year they can't remember their favorite recipes, they begin to forget how different children are related to them, things like that. We also see other signs besides memory, such as poor judgment or changes in personality that weren't there before.
Can you give me an example of the poor judgment?
Someone who maybe has been a very good investor all their lives and suddenly starts sinking large amounts of money into things that they end up losing. Or people who have been very frugal who suddenly start sending money in for sweepstakes and all the various solicitations that come to the house.
Gotcha. Is there a point then, there's a red flag where you say, hey, I need to go see a doctor about this?
Sometimes something major happens, you know. Someone will get lost when they're driving to a familiar location, or lose a lot of money, or have something happen that the family is not able to ignore. A lot of times, though, it's very gradual, and it's very difficult to decide whether there's really something going on or not. And our rule of thumb is if somebody thinks there's a problem, it's worth getting checked out.
Gotcha. And Viv, I know they can always make a call to the Alzheimer's Association. What kind of support do you all provide?
You know, Rob, we provide a lot of support for the community and for families. We provide individual counseling for families who are dealing with Alzheimer's disease and they have someone in their family that they're trying to care for. We provide monthly educational programs across the state of Nebraska. We also provide a dementia care conference, which will be happening this month in March at the end of the month, that the community as well as caregivers and medical professionals can also attend. We also have an enormous resource base online at our website, alz.org. If you go there, you can get a wonderful array of information and resources to help those caregivers and those families who are facing that disease. But that's just a small portion of what we offer. We have a lot more than that. We even have a library that's available across the United States. It's actually housed in Chicago at the headquarters, but we actually send out information across the United States to anyone who wants that information. It's really pretty phenomenal.
Absolutely. Now, something surprises me. The rate of women who develop Alzheimer's, for example, when a woman hits 60, she's nearly twice as likely to have Alzheimer's
than breast cancer. Right. It's amazing. It's phenomenal to see that statistic.
And when people come to you then, are they surprised that they're even dealing with the disease?
Shocked, actually, yes.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things we know that if you look at the 5 million plus people with Alzheimer's disease, of that number, 3 million are women, and that's astounding. So one of the things we're doing with the Alzheimer's Association is increasing our efforts to educate the community and women about the warning signs and how to take care of themselves, but also what to watch for, so that they'll know that, as Dr. Riley pointed out, it's time to go to the doctor, because when certain clues and symptoms happen, then that's an indication that I need to look into this. There may be something here that I really need to pay attention to, and to get a diagnosis, and hopefully get that diagnosis early.
Right. And Dr. Riley, both early onset, late onset Alzheimer's have a genetic component to them. I mean, there's some illnesses that have a genetic component to them, and you can go in and alter the gene's impact. Why can't we just go in and switch it off?
Well, that's technology that does not exist at this time. But really, the vast majority of people with Alzheimer's disease have it not because of a genetic component, but because it is age-associated.
Okay.
Because the single greatest risk for Alzheimer's disease is advancing age. While 1 in 6 women at the age of 60 may have Alzheimer's disease, it's more like 1 in 2 women at the age of 85. So it's something that is occurring, we are seeing more often, partly because people are living so much longer. But the genetic component of it is not something that I think we're going to change anytime soon.
Right. It's more the aging process, and obviously you can't change the aging process.
Well, there's one way, but it's not a good choice.
That's true. You know, living's better than the alternative.
Yeah.
Sure, but so what do you do? I mean, what do you tell your patients?
Well, there are several things that we can do to help people when they first come in. A lot of times people are really struggling because they're trying to do things that are just too hard. They're trying to maintain their home and maintain their yard and still have Christmas dinner and manage all their finances. And it's just exhausting to be doing that and trying to do all those things. Eventually things fall through the cracks and things don't go well. So we not only look for any other diseases that we can help them with or to help to optimize their medications, but we try to get social assistance in place, like if they would let somebody come in and clean their house every couple of weeks, then that's one job off their plate. If one of their kids will help with their finances, that's another job off their plate. And as they have a little less to manage, oftentimes people do a lot better.
Gotcha. And Viv, that's where you all step in as well. And you mentioned there's something coming up at the end in the spring, a huge event. Tell us about it.
It's absolutely huge. It's called the Dementia Care Conference. It's an annual event. It's actually one of the largest dementia care conferences in this area. And it's a statewide conference where people are actually coming in from across Nebraska to participate. It's a 2-day conference. Okay. The first day is comprised of education for professionals who need continuing education credits, whether it's perhaps a physician or some other type of medical professional. So it's an all-day training program for them. And then the second day of the conference is actually where we're going to be having workshops and breakout sessions on specific dementia-related topics. We're bringing in a keynote speaker, Dr. Burke from the Banner Institute, who will be talking about dementia and some various aspects of the disease that people need to know about as they're helping folks with that disease. But it's a 2-day conference, and we're very excited to have that come around this time of year. We're expecting this conference to be the biggest one yet.
Okay, and are you hopeful that it'll make a difference then, finally?
Absolutely we are. We think that in the near future that there is a breakthrough that will happen with this disease with regard to the research that's underway, but I think that we're going to have some better treatments, and eventually I believe we will have a cure for this disease, but it's going to take a smart investment in research in order for that to happen, because we've seen as a country when we make smart investments in research of major diseases, then we begin to get to a cure and better treatments. For example, with AIDS, once the country paid attention to the disease and started to make smart investments in research, we saw better treatments, better survival rates for that disease, and that's the same thing we want to see happen with Alzheimer's disease.
Gotcha. All right. Viv Ewing, thanks very much. Dr. Rebecca Riley, thanks very much for joining us. Great information.
Thanks, Rob.
Well, still plenty more to come on this edition of KETV News Watch 7's Chronicle, including what you need to know about a new clinical trial. It's designed to help find better drugs to treat Alzheimer's patients.
Is testing an investigational medicine to see if it will slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease.
Up next, we're going to chat with the doctor involved, find out where things stand when it comes to research and trying to find a cure for this debilitating disease. Welcome back. By this time, this half-hour edition of KETV News Watch 7 Chronicle is over. 24 more people will be diagnosed with Alzheimer's. But a new national study that includes local patients hopes to slow the progression of the disease. KETV News Watch 7's Alex Hoffman talked with a couple who's participating.
Dick Kincaid has Alzheimer's disease. Dick and his wife, Nella, drive from Lincoln to Omaha once a month, taking part in a national study.
Because of what the outcome could be, we could know more. It seems like Alzheimer's has been slow, maybe would be the word I would use, to find help for those that are affected.
The SNOBLE study is testing an investigational medicine to see if it will slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease.
Dr. Dan Merman, a professor in the Department of Neurological Sciences at UNMC, says the NOBLE study involves more than 400 patients nationwide, including 10 in Omaha.
This drug is designed, has properties that may be protective to nerve cells that are undergoing stress and degeneration due to the Alzheimer's process.
And right now, more than 5 million Americans suffer from mild to moderate Alzheimer's disease, including 35,000 right here in the state of Nebraska. However, no new drug has been approved by the FDA to treat Alzheimer's since 2003.
We still haven't been able to find a drug that truly can slow down the disease process, but there's a lot of hope for this medication and other studies.
Giving hope to patients like Dick Kincaid, who says despite the disease, he won't let Alzheimer's take away his spirit.
I'm so honored everyone.
That is true.
On the Health Watch, Alex Hoffman, KETV News Watch 7.
Well, they still need about 7 more patients to complete the study in Omaha. They're looking for people between the ages of 55 and 85 with mild to moderate Alzheimer's symptoms who've been taking certain Alzheimer's medications for at least 6 months and who weigh no more than 220 pounds. If you want specifics on the NOBLE study, you can call 402-552-6241. We have information on our website as well. That's KETV.com. All right, let's talk more about the study and the disease. Here now is Dr. Dan Merman from UNMC. Welcome. You know, in the story we just saw, you said there is hope for this medication. Why? What gives you that hope?
You know, the research process starts with animal studies and then some preliminary studies in human, and both have looked promising with this drug. And this drug is different than the currently available medicines. The ones we have now increase brain chemicals that help with memory, but they don't alter the underlying process of the Alzheimer's changes in the brain. So this is one that may be disease modifying, might slow down the process. It has some properties that help protect the nerve cells that are under stress and are degenerating. It helps the nerve cells kind of reconnect to each other. So those properties we hope will kind of alter the true progression of the disease. We still want to help symptoms, but if we could truly slow down the process, I think patients would do better.
In layman's terms, how do you protect the nerves from the degeneration and the stress? I mean, like, it's not like putting a coat on it or giving them a shield or anything.
So there's a couple mechanisms. So one of them is something called oxidative stress, but there's sort of a powerhouse in the cell called the mitochondria, and sometimes it may cause what are called free radicals. It may cause damage to proteins and lipids and things in the cell. There's even a process where once the cell is kind of in trouble, it may set off a mechanism called programmed cell death or apoptosis, where it's destined to die. So these kind of drugs can sometimes, prevent oxidative stress, can kind of stop the mechanism that leads these nerve cells to eventually degenerate and die.
And you mentioned how it's important to treat the symptoms or go after the symptoms of it. This seems to be more getting at the cause of it. Seems like that's a better aspect, way to go.
Yeah.
And
I think that's where a lot of the advances are coming. Yeah. So the genetic forms of Alzheimer's have taught us a lot about the protein, what goes wrong, what happens. At the core of Alzheimer's seems to be accumulation of a protein called beta amyloid. Okay. So it's a protein we all have, but people with Alzheimer's disease build up far more of this protein. The brain and the cells can't clear it. It starts to cause these amyloid plaques, and then that plaque generates kind of inflammation. It causes something called nerve fibrillary tangles, where within the cell, the skeleton of the cell starts to twist, and then the cells don't function right. So more and more it's pointing to this amyloid beta as sort of the initiator of a cascade of events that happens of slowly setting off a series of abnormalities.
Interesting.
So the field's been trying to do, well, what can we do to kind of prevent the buildup of amyloid? Can we remove it once it's there? And I think our failures so far have been trying to approach that problem too late in the process. So with some of the new imaging technology, we can see plaques in living people. So there's a new type of a PET scan in the past 10 years that shows the amyloid plaque buildup. Oh. And the latest from these studies suggests that at least 15 years and maybe 20 years before people have memory loss, that plaque process has started. So now we think we might have a window for prevention. There may be a period of time where we could intervene if we could find a treatment that might prevent Alzheimer's.
Let me ask you about that. There's a study too, the Alzheimer's disease prevention study.
Yeah.
What exactly is that
study?
It's
called the A4 study. It's the anti-amyloid therapy and asymptomatic Alzheimer's. So it's a new study that has never been done before. It's supported by the National Institutes of Health and Eli Lilly that makes the drug. They're looking for people that are normal, that have normal cognition. They have to be between age 65 and 85. Okay. But as a part of the screening process, they have one of these amyloid PET scans. And if they have elevated amyloid, then they can participate in this study. And then half the group would get an experimental drug that looks promising. It uses the immune system to try to remove this abnormal amyloid. So it's called a monoclonal antibody, but it's an IV medicine given once a month. That group will get that medicine for 3 years while we compare it to the placebo group to see if we can prevent the onset of memory loss in that group that received the drug.
So using your own body to help fight it.
And these are kind of manufactured. And they've tried a lot of approaches, for example, to vaccinate people, but older adults don't generate as much of an immune response, and they can't control sometimes kind of negative effects and inflammation can happen. So these are kind of manufactured antibody, but using the immune system, but like a drug.
Now, is the A4 study, is that something that's being done here too?
It is.
Okay.
And it's both these studies are coordinated through the Alzheimer's Disease Cooperative Study, which is a national group of academic centers that do Alzheimer's research. For the A4 study, we're one of about 60 sites across the country, and certainly the only one in the region. And we hope that there'll be some big breakthroughs. I think no matter what, we'll learn a lot about sort of how we might prevent Alzheimer's. Okay. There's even a corollary study that for those that don't have elevated amyloid, the Alzheimer's Association has helped supported what's called the LEARN study to really learn what happens to those that might have some memory loss symptoms but don't have amyloid plaque buildup.
Well, let me ask this. I mean, most people who get involved in medical studies for diseases tend to be somewhat optimistic that they will have a positive outcome. Are you optimistic that we will find, if not a cure, at least a way to slow down Alzheimer's?
I think we're getting very close to hopefully finding an approach that would actually slow it down, maybe prevent the onset by 5 years or more and truly slow it down. The current drugs look like they might slow it down by 30%, but I'm optimistic in the sense, much like a savings account, even though the short-term interest rates might not be much, it's cumulative, so it would add up over time. So a 30% reduction of the rate of the disease process would have big effects after 5 or 10 years.
Absolutely. Dr. Dan Mermin, thanks very much for joining us this morning. Great information. Good luck on the studies.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to be right back with options for caregivers who are struggling to stay in their own home, trying to make life as normal as possible for those who are battling Alzheimer's. And welcome back to KETV News Watch 7's Chronicle. This morning we have been talking about Alzheimer's disease. For many families, when a loved one's diagnosed, they don't think twice about becoming the primary caregiver. but after a while it can start to take a toll. Joining us now is Lakeland Hogan with Home Instead Senior Care. Lakeland, thanks so much for joining us. First off, is it so important to keep Alzheimer's patients in their home?
Well, I think that's where the majority of people would like to be. You know, that's where they raise their families. They have great memories there. So if they can stay there, I think that's where they would choose to be.
Does that help them in their process of recovery, or not recovery, but just dealing with Alzheimer's?
Yeah, having familiar surroundings is very important for someone with Alzheimer's disease or dementia. They know where the restroom is, they know where the kitchen is, their bedroom, their favorite chair is there. So it can be comforting to be in a familiar surrounding such as your home.
Is it traumatic to not be in your home?
Well, it kind of depends on the situation, depends on their stage in the disease. Sometimes going on outings, maybe to the doctor's office, can be a little traumatic because it does take them out of their familiar surroundings. And sometimes noise can be something that agitates them, or they might see something in the environment that makes them a little uncomfortable. So it can be a little bit traumatic depending on the person.
Now, if someone decides to become the primary caregiver, maybe they have no training or anything, my loved one has Alzheimer's, I'm going to take care of them. What are they in for? What should they expect? I mean, that's huge.
It is. It's a lot to take on. And you know, as the disease progresses, the individual's needs also increase. So Dr. Riley earlier mentioned, you know, if that person can alleviate some of the things that are going on in their lives, you know, if they can delegate tasks to different family members, or, you know, a caregiver could hire an in-home service such as Home Instead to do the grocery shopping, to do the laundry, taking away some of those little tasks and responsibilities can alleviate the burden not only on the individual but that primary caregiver. And I think what's also important, a lot of people forget that respite for that primary caregiver is so important. You know, getting away to take care of themselves, because a lot of times they're so busy making doctor's appointments and for their loved one, or making sure that they're taking their medications, that they forget themselves to stay healthy, to eat right, to go to their own doctor's appointments, and even just to get away to exercise or to have lunch with friends can really be rejuvenating and can keep them going as a family caregiver.
Right, because if you're not healthy, how can you help the health of somebody else?
Exactly.
You actually end up caring for two people rather than just one. So what does Home Instead do? I mean, you say you help give them respite. Specifically, what do you do?
Well, our caregivers are trained in Alzheimer's and dementia, so they know the behaviors that go along with the disease and how to manage those. And we really dial in on personalized care. So we want our caregivers create meaningful activities or engage them in meaningful activities, in addition to, you know, light housekeeping, maybe assistance with personal care like grooming and bathing, meal preparation, those types of things. And that personalized care those activities can be a variety of things. And I'll give you an example. We have a gentleman who used to be in the construction business, and so the caregiver takes him on drives to construction sites, and they just sit and watch the trucks and the backhoes and those types of things, and it creates meaningful conversation and really brings back good memories. So little things like that can make a huge difference and impact in the lives of that person.
And that's what it all comes down to, is the quality of life for the person involved. Lakeland, thanks very much for joining us. Good advice and good luck.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Okay, again, there is a two-day Dementia Care Conference in Omaha later this month. It's on March 27th. Again, as Viv Ewing told us earlier, it's open to family caregivers, health professionals, even students thinking about going into geriatrics. It's at the La Vista Conference Center. If you want more information or would like to know each day's topics, log on to KETV.com. We have created a link to the event. Just look under As Seen on 7. We have also created links for all the other studies and resources we mentioned here this morning. Now, I'm Rob McCartney. You've been watching KETV News Watch 7th Chronicle. Have a great week. Hope to see you back here again next Sunday morning.